Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if two people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
Do you like wrestling trivia? Then check out the 5-Star Match Game, the Pro Wrestling Quiz Show. I'm Joe Gagney, and every episode, I grill 3 contestants with 5 rounds of power-packed wrestling trivia. We have over 30 evergreen episodes in the archives covering WWE, AEW, Japan, Mexico, and much, 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 much more. Play along at home and check it out today.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome to Eurograps Express. I'm your host Neil David, and we are back once again to talk about all the exciting events on the British and European wrestling scene. It's the middle of the night on a Saturday, and I am yet again waiting up to see if our mate CM Punk addresses his enemies in a way that's going to be entertaining to me, and I guarantee it is, because if there's one thing we know about CM Punk, it's that he's an absolutely messy sod, and he's going to go out tonight and be Phil Messy Brooks, and I can't wait. Obviously, you've got a bit of an advantage on me. The episode isn't going to drop until Monday, so you're going to know just how messy it is, just how worked it is, who knows. But I'm staying up anyway, and I thought we should drop an episode because it's been in a couple of weeks since I've spoken to you. I had a little bit of a panic earlier on, actually. I had my kind of heart skipped a beat. I saw a tweet from Shigehiro Irie, who, as you know, is the WXW champion. Or actually, he's not. That's the point of the tweet. He's not the WXW champion anymore. And I know that this evening, he faced Mike DeVecchio, the Belgian War Machine. And I thought, they've strapped up Mike D. And I absolutely love Mike D. If you've not listened to any of my WXW stuff, or any of my GWF stuff, or even some of the Hungarian stuff, because he turns up on that, he's like if Brian Cage was an absolute chav and worked a little bit better. I'm really on the fence about just how good he is. I think he's got the potential to be great, and he won a title challenge, and I thought, oh my god, they belted him up. What a bold move. You know, because WXW, I think, if we're honest, between the big events, they find themselves a little bit of a holding pattern, don't they? And it's not very exciting, which is why we only drop in from time to time. But I thought, wow, strapping up Mike D. But they haven't. It sounds like, and I'm seeing this on Strigger's Twitter feed, I've not seen this anywhere else, but it sounds like they've done a WrestleMania 9 situation where instead of Hulk Hogan, it's Dreisker has come out and he's the champion. But what a shame. I feel like it's one of those things that I saw it and I was like, no way. And then I thought, but maybe. You know, what's that gif of, is it, not a gif, that is that thing of the woman, isn't it? And at the top, she's like, and then at the bottom, she's like, well, maybe. It was kind of one of those moments. But Mike D, I can't wait to watch the match because I know it's going to be great, even though I've had the ending spoiled. I don't even know if I want to watch this WXW show. I don't know the situation, but apparently the Arrows of Hungary have split up. What a shame that is. I'm sure it's a kayfabe thing, obviously. I don't know. I think one of them, I can't remember, isn't one of them like a a high-profile sociologist somewhere or something. Like, they were really, like, prominent academics. So I know the wrestling isn't full-time, at least for one of them. So maybe there's some situation there. But I think I watched the situation, I watched the show when it drops in a couple of days. And it'd be good, wouldn't it, to do like an Arrows of Hungary deep dive. So if you've got any matches, any Arrows of Hungary matches that you stick with you, that you think are really great, slide in the old DMs. In fact, don't slide in the DMs. Get on the Discord. Don't slide in Twitter DMs because I don't read them very often. But if you go on the Discord, there's a Eurograps Express room and you can tell me all about your Arrows of Hungary matches in there. We continue the march to All In weekend. A couple more events announced. First of all, fantastic news for Pro Wrestling Eve. The show they're doing with Choco Pro, or Gato Move, is completely sold out, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, I've got to be honest, I don't know anything about Gato Move or Choco Pro. I don't think I've ever seen a match. I probably have. I remember seeing their name as a file in the Real Hero Drive back in the day. So that's about as deep as my knowledge goes. But obviously it's a draw, isn't it? It's sold out. It's something that I know a lot of people are really excited about. And I think it contributes to this festival of wrestling, doesn't it? There's also been 2 live podcasts announced. First of all, the Grapple lads have done a live podcast, and I was going to go. I was thinking, I'll probably head down to that, at least for a couple of hours. You know, they're doing an all-day thing with quizzes and all sorts. And I was listening to the podcast, and Benno and JP were like, get your tickets quick, because this thing's selling fast. And I thought, I know Benno did some training in Hindley for GWF. I know he's a worker. I know he knows how to put bums in seats, you know. And I thought, there'll be plenty of tickets left. But it turns out it was a shoot, brother, and it's sold out. It's gone. I can't go. So I'm a little bit gutted about that. But you know, it's fantastic news. What an amazing thing to do, and an amazing thing to sell out. I think it shows that British podcasting is not dead, despite my Twitter mentions. Another podcast that's been announced is the Observing Live, Wrestle Observer with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez. I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to give you some information first. Then I'm going to give you a second in which I want you to try and guess the price of this show, right? It's Observing Live with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez. It's from 10 to 12, so 2 hours before the, on the Sunday, before the actual All-In event. You get a meet and greet photo, an autograph opportunity. It's in conjunction with Wrestle Tours, and we know who they are, don't we? All Progress. Guess how much they want for that? Have you got a number in your head? £55. £55. I love Dave Meltzer. I like Brian Alvarez a lot, and I know there's a lot of people who I don't get this attitude they have towards Dave Meltzer, that he's somehow a fraud. He obviously isn't, is he? And I don't talk about stuff like that because I don't want to. People are doing it disingenuously. Meltzer's an easy target and that sort of thing, and it's by people that I think they expose themselves when they open their mouths. Because there's this idea that they're criticising people like me for reading The Observer and the dirt sheets, because apparently I believe everything that Dave Meltzer says. That's always the thing, isn't it? That, you know, it's just everything's for Dave Meltzer. Everyone, this big hive mind where everyone follows him and they don't know what proper wrestling is. Whereas actually, I don't know anybody that subscribes to the newsletter and listens to Wrestling Observer Live because they believe everything Dave says. What they like is critical opinions. And quite often, I'll disagree with things that Dave says. Quite often, I'll agree. Quite often, there'll be a little bit either way. It won't even be that big a deal. But the fact that those people are calling you out on it and assuming you just believe everything you say, it's exposing themselves, isn't it? Because that's how they treat their bishops and their cornets. They just believe everything that's regurgitated to them. They don't want to hear people with critical opinions and engage with those critical opinions themselves. They just want to go on a rant online, which ironically I'm doing now, so I'm probably going to stop. It looks like it's sold out, to be honest with you. You can't buy tickets. It says they come on sale. Unless they're not on sale yet. I'm sure they said they're on sale. Yeah, 14th of June, so they were on sale this week. And it's just sold out. Yeah, sold out. In fact, both levels have sold out. General admission and the 7-star ticket, which is VIP. You get priority seating and you get all loads of autographs and stuff. That's sold. That's nuts. How much were Grapple charging? Let's have a look. Let's get on. Let's see. Because it's... I mean, I like Dave, but the Grapple one will be funnier, won't it? And the fact it's called All In It, I think, is absolutely fantastic. £12.50 Grapple wanted. £12.50. And you get another 3 hours. So, I don't know. I think if you're going to go to a live podcast, I mean, you can't go to either because it's all sold out. But if you chose the Grapple one, you've made the right choice. Anyway, we better talk about some wrestling. As I say, the WXW show has happened a little bit too late to talk about, but it sounds like it was really eventful, so we 100% need to go back and check that out. But for now, what I want to do is get caught up with Rev Pro, because it's been quite a while since we've watched some Rev Pro. I watched not the Sheffield show, that's tomorrow. I watched the Stevenage show this evening. So we're going to get ourselves prepared for the Sheffield show, and then we carry on the road to York Hall. So let's talk about a little bit of Rev Pro. They're in a little bit of a tricky situation at the minute, Rev Pro. I think there's a big change in the roster. If you think a lot of the things that we were watching and enjoying over the last couple of months have been based around people like Gabe Kidd and Dan Maloney. And with both of them going over to New Japan, joining the Bullet Club as well. I mean, that's a great tag team, isn't it? No, it's Clark Connors and Dan Maloney, great tag team. We talked about how much we love that match. And Gabe Kidd and Alex Coughlin, having them just people who want to scrap and want to fight. Did you see that Dan Maloney explanation as to why he flipped? It's just, what a fantastic... I cannot believe that 6 months ago, we were watching Dan Maloney's promos and saying, I'm really worried about the quality of these promos. Do you remember when he was kind of doing live things with the mic, like as in the audience? He'd grab a microphone and start shouting about it to the live audience. And it was genuinely worrying, wasn't it? It was like, this is what's going to hold you back if you don't improve these. They were corny. They were uncomfortable. They were not good promos at all. And now, absolutely phenomenal. And what an amazing little story as well to talk about. Saying that he joined the United Empire and he ended up being bored by TJP and having Akira ask him if he wanted to go for bubble tea. And then he had that match with Clark Connors. They met backstage. They realised they like kicking the shit out of people, and they went for a pint and decided to form a tag team because they both like beating people up. And the way he delivered the promo was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And he was a little bit shaky at first. I mean, I would imagine, because he found out, didn't he, about halfway through. I know Chris Charlton was tweeting about this publicly. He was saying about gaijin. Because I don't know about you, like I mean, this is a cultural thing, isn't it? If you're not in that culture and you're not invested in it, you're not going to know. But I always thought gaijin just meant person not from Japan. But there's layers to it. You know, there's levels, and that word's become loaded over time, and it's not a word now that people in Japan use. It's not something that you would say about somebody else. So I would imagine that maybe knocked his confidence a little bit. I don't know, but it's not long term, because he's absolutely killing it at the minute over there, and I think it's fantastic what's going on for him. But we're not talking about New Japan. We're talking about Rev Pro, and removing this element as soften the shows, I think, that we're going to look at. I don't think if you're the sort of person like me who's got used to this big bruising style that Rev Pro have been leaning towards, it's kind of not there as much anymore, and it's that constant thing about watching indies, even though RevPro is a high-level indie, one of the best indies in the world, actually. And do you know what? I didn't have the confidence to say that. And then you listen to the flagship and you get Joe Lanza on there who's saying, yeah, it's probably the best indie promotion in the world at the minute. And it is. But it's got a little bit of a different feel at the minute to what I've really been enjoying for the past few months. So we're going to go through the last couple of shows. We've got Live at London 74 from the start of the month. We've got Live in Southampton and then Cruel Intentions. And that's going to get us ready for a couple of big shows coming up. I mean, ultimately, we're all building up towards Epic Encounter in a couple of weeks. And then obviously to the 11th anniversary show in the Copper Box. But RevPro tend to think long term. So I think it's worth spending a little bit of time chewing on these nuggets. I feel like I'm going to be really negative as well, by the way. And I'm going to try and stop myself because I think there are a lot of positives here. But there's quite a lot of stuff, I should say, of little bits I don't like. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if it was just one or two of these little niggles, I think it would be fine because you're always going to have those niggles on no matter what show. But there's just a few things at the minute. And let's get it started because this is typified straight away here. At Live in London 74, it opens with Luke Jacobs against Joshua James. I like the Contenders division, first of all. It's been a while since we talked about the Contenders, but basically they're the young lions of RevPro, but they're a little bit weird because they're not young lions. They're people like David Francisco, who's like a veteran, it seems. Well, he is a veteran, but, like even on our scene, he's been around forever now. And Joshua James feels like he's been wearing those black tights for ages, and they look old. So that it's kind of like a bit of a weird dynamic, but it's such a clever thing to do from a booking point of view, because I feel like Joshua James is getting to the point where they can just give him a gimmick at any moment. Like if they feel like there's a place on that roster for him, they could just move him out, give him a gimmick, and it's a fresh start. Whereas in the meantime, you've got a guy in black trunks who you can beat without any consequences. Jacobs has had a funny run of shows. I think, first of all, what you see in this match is the best of him. And this is the best match he had over this run of 3. And he's found, I think, a really interesting charisma, because that was kind of what was missing, wasn't it, from Luke Jacobs? It wasn't his strength, his charisma. It was always his work and his brutality and the way he fought, and that's a special type of charisma. But there was sometimes that little bit of crowd connection missing. It was always growing and developing, and I think in this you see that really start to come into play. He's much, much more confident walking to the ring, the way he smiles, the way he looks, much, much more confident. They did the should I shake hands thing at the start, and I feel like that should be, do you know what we should do one day? Just a wrestling 101. I don't know if that'll translate well to people outside Britain, but Room 101 from 1984, where you go in a room and it's your worst fears. There was a kind of like a panel show, I guess, in the 90s. Who hosted it? I know Frank Skinner did the reboot. Oh, it was, what's he called from Have I Got News For You? He's rubbish. Paul Merton. I hate Paul Merton. Do you know why I don't like Paul Merton? Is because he's got that, he makes these jokes all the time on Have I Got News For You. And it really wind me up, because I get the dynamic of the two panel show leaders, is that Ian Hislop is the public schoolboy and that Paul Merton is the working class one. And that's great. That's a great dynamic, comedy gold and all that business. But the way Paul Merton does it is so many times you'll watch him say, I'm working class, I only got one GCSE. And you think, just because you're working class don't mean you're thick. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite patronising, I think, the way he says that. But anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about that. But yeah, they send things into Room 101. You go and you say, oh, this is the thing that I really hate. And I think if I was to do a Wrestling Room 101, this handshake bollocks at the start would go. I love the Ring of Honor style. If you're going to do a fight with honor, is that it starts, you both shake your hands. You could do the two babyface thing where it starts and one just walks over earnestly and shakes the other's hand. But that thing of the heel holding out his hand and the babyface going, oh, should I shake his hand or shouldn't I? Well, obviously not, no. Obviously you shouldn't shake his hand, and you're making yourself look thick. You're completely destroying any credibility you have. And I know this is a minor thing. And I know you're thinking, Neil, why are you so upset about a handshake? It just bugs me. It's just one of my Wrestling Room 101 things. I mean, ultimately, Luke Jacobs here just does cool stuff, and he understands that. And I think that's what's really appealing about him and wrestlers like him. He's not a spot wrestler at all. You know, I'm not saying he's doing things purely for the sake of it. It's coherent and it makes sense. But he understands that a deadlift German is cool as anything. And ultimately, what I came away from this match thinking is I need something for Luke Jacobs to move into. And I don't know necessarily what that is. It might be, you know, I know he's got the Gabe Kidd match at York Hall, and I think that's something that you could work towards and build, but there's a piece missing from him now of that next step. And I know I said that for Luke Jacobs, that he needs to prove that he can be the guy. And he's proved that he can be it. He's proved that he can have those great matches. But now it's time to really consolidate that and see if he can take it to the next level. It's one of those things that you can never just stop in wrestling. You can never be stagnant, both as a critic, as a you know, in any position, you know, wrestler, whatever. And I think that Luke Jacobs needs to do that now. I think it'll probably happen at York Hall. But in the meantime, he needs to do something. And we'll talk about what he does later on that I don't like at all. Next up, we had Zach Knight, and I'm afraid we're going to have to do it again. It was against Rampage Brown. We're going to have to do the Zach Knight public court and consider whether or not he's actually any good. I mean, first of all, it started with Gideon Gray coming to the ring, and Gideon Gray came to the ring looking like the personification of a Sunday supplement from a newspaper. He looked like the embodiment of Marks and Spencer's. He looked, you know, his jeans were just a little too stonewashed and a little too blue, and he had the blazer on. He was a bit like a second-run Clarkson. And if you think these things are insults, you're absolutely wrong. Like, I think Gideon Gray is one of my favourite all-time characters in wrestling. And the fact he didn't, I'm going to say it again, and I know you've heard me say this before, he needs votes for Best on Interviews. Joe, it's interesting about Rampage Brown. Did you see? I saw a tweet earlier on from Matthew from Botchamania, or Matthew, I should say, and he tweeted that match from Preston City Wrestling where Rampage Brown went absolutely ape on Josh Bottom. I was there for it. I was there live in the building. I remember feeling really uncomfortable. I don't think I'd been going to PCW for that long, and I wasn't really up to date with everything in the stories. I wasn't obviously going to buy the DVDs, was I? So, you know, I downloaded them. Yeah, I didn't buy the PCW. I got a connector, downloaded them off LimeWire. Yeah, and I downloaded them and I refused to answer the door. You know. Anyway, these are whatever. What am I talking about? Yeah, it's funny, like Rampage Brown being like the NXT guys coming back, isn't it? It's weird to see them now, and I'm going to talk about one in particular later on, but there's a bit of that stink, isn't there? I think people like Rampage Brown, I'm going to get over it. And like I did with Eddie Dennis, I'm going to get over it. But I feel like they've got to pay the due a little bit. And we can't review a match with an NXT UK superstar in it who's now returned with their hat in their hand without mentioning it. And I think that's only apropos and only appropriate, really. This is a bit of a holdback to what it's been like for the last couple of months, in that Rev Pro kind of became the just have a fight competition, which I really like. The match, though, okay, I'm just going to have to say it because I've got to be honest, and sometimes you don't want to say things because you know some people listen to this, and you know that I know that people in Rev Pro have heard some of the episodes, and I like them to. But I've got to be honest, and you've got to be constructive. Zach Knight did some of the worst chain wrestling I have ever seen in my entire life in this match. It was abysmal. It was absolutely shocking. And what made that worse, you know, he was doing things like flips and trying to do the, you know, when they end up on all fours and try to crawl back between legs, but it was so stunted and awful that it just looked absolutely abysmal. I don't know why he did it. You're not there to wrestle like Zack Sabre Jr. I just don't. It's like when you're watching a really good metal band and you'll get a guy who's a great screamer. And I'm not a huge metalhead, but I like a little bit every now and then. And you'll get a guy who's just got a great voice for screaming. And then you'll start singing and he can't really sing. And you just think, well, don't sing. And it's the same with this. If you can't do the technical wrestling, don't do it. It is an utterly bizarre thing to do, especially against Rampage Brown, because you want someone to batter you. You want someone to get battered. Rampage Brown's your man. He's brilliant. The ending was really good at this. Big, huge pile driver. And there was a big, drawn-out exit from Zack Knight. I feel like we're going to go... and this is the thing with Zack Knight, and I don't want to keep bringing him to the, like I say, wrestler court and sort of weigh him up, because he's probably proved that he has a place on the roster and all that business, whatever terminology they want to use. But it just feels a little bit like he's going to do the underdog thing again, and we're going to see a story we've had with him before, but you're not going to get as good as it was before, because he was the guy that should never have been on that New Japan show, but got in, through luck, and finally got that Rocky moment, that chance to prove he deserved to be there. And it feels like they've just been sort of dragging that story out and not really telling it for a long time. And yeah, I'm not sure I can be bothered with that anymore. Excellent line from Gideon Gray. He told someone in the audience that, and this is a quote, "Your mother is a whore." There's just something about that as an insult, isn't there? There's just no fat on it whatsoever. It's pure distilled insult. The fact that it's about someone else's mother as well is brilliant. And he was going off about Maloney, which you understand because he's a traitor. Next up, we had Hyan versus Sky Smithson. Hyan's going to go through a little bit of a critical thing here as well, because I was never that high on Hyan. I know a lot of people really like her, and I feel like when she had the last run in Rev Pro, she was great as that contender for a few of the other women on the roster. She was great as someone to bring in, because I think she's Canadian, isn't she? She was great as someone to bring in and have these good matches, because she's relatively competent. But it feels like with the way the women's division is now and the way they're going to start to push her again, I just don't think she's a wrestler who can handle that push. Like from a technical point of view, do you know what I mean? I don't think she comes across in the ring as being particularly believable, but it's been a while, so we need to give it another go. Here we go. Third match, second handshake. Hyan went to shake Sky Smithson's hand, made herself look like an idiot because she's obviously not going to go for it. There was some good strength spots in this, and I think, do you know what the women's division needs more than anything at the minute is to just build Sky Smithson as an absolute killer. That's what it needs. There's just such a really easy story here that Alex Windsor's going to come back, and I think Sky Smithson should be just running roughshod over everybody. And she won here. She did. No, she didn't. She lost. I'm telling fibs. See, that's what I mean, and I knew that as well. But to me, it seems so obvious to have Sky Smithson winning and kicking bum here that it just seems weird to have a lose to Hyan. I just don't get it. It was just rubbish forearms. It was... Sky Smithson has heat herself already, and then, Windsor came out and there was all sorts of stuff at the end, and it was a weird promo at the end, and I promised I wasn't going to talk too much about Rev Pro production anymore, because you know what I'm going to say. But Alex Windsor came out to deliver a promo and start talking about, how she's nearly back and she's nearly ready to go and what have you. But she was kind of interacting with the audience, but they'd not mic'd the audience at all, and you couldn't hear what the audience was saying, yet she was responding to them, and it just came across really weird, like she was having a one-sided conversation or talking to some voices in her head or something. It was bizarre. Danny Luna comes out, and it's just, I don't know. I think the division's a mess. It's overbooked. I don't know where these stories are going. I think often in any kind of art or any kind of literature, movies, and especially in wrestling, often the simple story's the best, and I don't really understand the story they're telling here with the women's division. Next up, we had Harrison Bennett against Robbie X. Harrison Bennett, I'm glad he's someone they're taking a chance on. I know he was injured the last time he was in Rev Pro. I think he should have been back earlier than this, but he like I say, I think he dislocated his shoulder, something like that. He's good, Harrison. He's got little bits about his work that I really enjoy. Like, I love the way he interacts with the referee. Like, there was a bit in this where he threw Robbie X outside and blatantly cheated and did something that was against the rules. And he just sort of turned to the ref and was like, all right, yeah, sorry, I know, I'll stop. And I know that sounds like such a little thing, but it's just such a characterful thing, and it's the kind of thing that I really like and really pick up on. He's definitely got a lot of unrealised potential. And I think he's a bit clunky at the minute, but you know, keep him around. I think he's somebody who's, you know, he's finding his feet, but he's one to watch. Robbie X is a little bit of a funny one at the minute. Because again, Robbie X is another guy whose promos used to be terrible, but they've got a lot better. His charisma's great now. I feel like I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, because I was a big advocate of having Robbie X just do challenges of the week. And I think he needs a little bit more. But what he does not need is what they're giving him now. In fact, it's not that I was wrong. I think what it is Mills has improved so much, you could do a little bit more with him than just have Challenger of the Week. And that would have been great, but we could do more with him now. And this cruiserweight story that they're telling is really bothering me. Because it is such a waste of resources, to use a neoliberalism that I apologise for. It is such a weird way to tell this story. Mills wants the challenge, Connor Mills. And again, talk about improved wrestlers. Connor Mills has improved exponentially in these last few months. With the new look, the new attitude, he's fantastic. And it makes perfect sense that he would then want to go for the cruiserweight belt. But they tell the story over these few shows through constant run-ins, back and forth, attacking each other behind the back. What a crappy way to tell that story. What a crappy way to build this match. I could not think of a worse way to build to Robbie X versus Connor Mills. What a terrible, terrible way to do it. Robbie X's thing is that he's a fighting champion. Have him have a load of matches where he barely clings on, and just about the weight of the championship is weighing him down, and he's got to take on all these challenges that he's never had before, and it's harder than he ever imagined. But he's going to do it, and he's going to fight through because he's the blue eye, and he's going to do it for you. He's going to do it for the kids in Stevenage. He's going to do it for the faithful who believed in him for all those years. And then you've got Connor Mills, the arrogant technical genius who finds it easy. He's revitalised. He's angry. He's a dirty, dangerous fighter who can wrestle better than you from a technical point of view, and he's not afraid to hurt you in the ring. Robbie X is finding his matches difficult. He's clinging on by the skin of his teeth. Connor Mills, he's finding his matches easy. He's blasting through, and he has earned that number one contender's shot, and he's earned it through this new attitude of true grit, of not being afraid to hurt people and damage people, and he doesn't care how many friends he loses because he's had friendship before, and look where it got him. I've just said that off the top of my head, and I don't get paid a penny to talk or think or book any kind of professional wrestling, and it didn't involve a single run-in, and it's better than the garbage that we've been seeing. And the reason why I'm so angry about it, the reason why it's wound me up so much, is because imagine we've seen what Connor Mills could do with a great, simple story to chew on, because he did it with Michael Oku. And when did that Michael Oku story start to lose its way? When did it become bad? When they started adding pro wrestling rubbish to it. And you don't get any more pro wrestling garbage. You don't get any higher level of pro wrestling rubbish than telling your story with a series of run-ins. They're going to piss this story up the wall. Next up, we had Connor Mills have a match. It was Dynamite Lee Dawson against Connor Mills. Don't know Dynamite Lee, and I think, was this his debut? I think it was. I know he's someone from down in the Portsmouth school. And then Robbie X, I'm not going to shout again, but Robbie X came in and attacked Mills. He said, what a garbage way to tell the story. Oh, there's so many wrestling tropes that would make more sense. Put Robbie X on commentary. New Japan do that a lot, don't they? Put Robbie X on commentary and have him watch while Connor Mills stretches the young boy and stares at him and is arrogant towards him. Instead, they had, I mean, he's good, Dynamite Lee, but he's a young boy, and he's doing all these great strength spots and all these flips, and he was very impressive. But Mills should have beaten him in 5 minutes while looking Robbie X in the eye. A load of rubbish. This is one of those times when star ratings need to be thrown out the window, because you're gonna get your star rating match when they have the blow off. You're going to get that. Whether it's York Hall or Copper Box, I would imagine York Hall. But you're going to have that match at some point. And that's when both of them can go in and give you your stars. But for someone like Connor Mills, he needs that solid foundation of story. And how they think they're getting it here, I have no idea. Next up, we had Levi Muir and Shah Samuels against Greedy Souls. Levi Muir is relatively new to Rev Pro. I know he's had a couple of matches. Again, I think this is something that I was saying before about a bit of a change of pace. I know Levi Muir was doing jobs on NXT UK TV. He wrestled for some very, very small promotions. I'm looking at Cage Match, and he had one for Progress that I don't remember, to be honest with you, at all. And he's done a bit for Sovereign Pro up here in Manchester, a bit for Wrestle Carnival, but he's not had many matches at all. We're talking one a month, really, at most. And he's had a few for Rev Pro. He beat Brendan White at the last Live in London. He's very much a pro wrestler. I don't necessarily mean that as an insult, because I think it can work. But if we were talking earlier on about the idea of Rev Pro being this promotion of bruisers, of lads who batter each other, when you've got very natural hard men like Luke Jacobs and Zach Knight and Gabe Kidd and people like that. Levi Muir's not really like that. He's very chiseled. He's got the Adonis kind of look about him. He does the babyface fire thing. He's always working the crowd, brother, that sort of thing. He's very much a pro wrestler. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're going to team with someone like Shah Samuels. I don't think this is a criticism. It's just a difference. And I think you're going to fall on one side or the other. And I'm kind of hoping that rather than go the Levi Muir side of things, they lean more into the Luke Jacobs side of things. And that's not me criticising Levi Muir. I think he's got a career in wrestling. He really impressed me. I just don't know if it's what I want from my wrestling necessarily. He's got great energy though. He's got great charisma. Probably needs to chill the shouting a little bit. Works okay. Shah's selling was a bit much. There was an element of doing moves here just to be entertaining. This match was neither here nor there, to be honest with you. It was fine. And then we had Leighton Buzzard against Michael Oku. Really like the fact they're getting behind Leighton Buzzard. And obviously Michael Oku's now just on this. He's got the match against Great O'Khan at York Hall for the big belt. Do you know what's weird about this? And this is another thing that's kind of bugging me a little bit about Rev Pro. Is that I don't understand why they're obsessed with weight classes at certain times. Like the way they went on and on and on and on about Luke Jacobs' weight and Dan Maloney's weight. And I don't mind that in principle, because you're kind of giving an element of the reality to it. You're kind of giving a bit of a sports presentation to it, which Rev Pro kind of like to do sometimes. I know they can be very sports entertaining, but they also like to keep that grounded root. I don't mind that. Obviously, I think that's the way I prefer my wrestling, if I'm completely honest with you. But now they've got Michael Oku challenging for the heavyweight championship, and they're kind of obligated to talk about the fact he's challenging and wants to be a heavyweight, but he's Michael Oku. And I think this is a minor thing, really, but I just think if you're gonna have Michael Oku challenge for the heavyweight championship, stop talking about people's weight, because it exposes things a little bit. There's no benefit to bringing it up, is there? Clearly building up some momentum for Oku, which is really good. Great struggle at the end. I mean, Oku's selling is just incredible, and he can really do the comeback, the fighting babyface. He's so good at it. And he's on a great build. And like I say, I'm really glad they're bringing back Leighton Buzzard. I think he's probably slightly higher in the card than I would like him, especially when we see things later on in these runner shows. But I think he's a great addition, a very smart addition, and not somebody who I ever would have thought. He shows that he's kind of got his finger on the pulse, Andy, hasn't he? He knows who to bring in and sort of recognise him. So that's live at London. A little bit of a mixed bag. Let's go even further down south to Southampton. We're back in Southampton, and we know that only means one thing. It's our favourite Wonky Hardcam is back. I like the Southampton shows generally. They've got a little bit of a different feel to them. I think Southampton and the Stevenage shows just tend to have that kind of more family-friendly kind of kid-based sort of feel to them, don't they? But that's fine. It gives it a little bit of a change, doesn't it? You've got your live at London's for your proper wrestling nerds, and then it's just a little bit more light-hearted. But we started off with Greedy Souls against David Francisco and Joshua James. Andy said actually on this one, Andy said that Joshua James might be moving up soon, which is great. I love David Francisco. I think he's great. He really took a battering in this, and he really can. And it was fantastic. But it was obviously dominant. Danny Jones just absolutely tying David Francisco in knots. And if you're going to do that to anyone and have them sell it well, it's him. They were dominant. Things like lifting heads off canvases, that kind of thing. And then Francisco got a hot tag, and it was great. Just proper pro wrestling. Talking about NXT UK superstars coming back, there was a video package at the end from Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster, and they're challenging the Greedy Souls. So very Welsh at the minute, isn't it, Rev Pro, which is great. All those Pro Wrestling Chaos guys, I really like them. What do you say, though, about Andrews and Webster? They need to drop the WWE cadence if they're going to do promos. The promo that they delivered was very, very NXT. It was very, well, I hear that you're saying this. Well, have you considered this? The weird kind of, Chat GPT writes better promos than they deliver in those promotions. And it feels like it's infested in them now. And I've no doubt that those two are, they're going to have a great match, aren't they, these two teams? Especially, Mandrews is brilliant, isn't he? He's a great wrestler. I really like Greedy Souls. Flash Morgan Webster's all right. He's perfectly functional. I don't know. I just feel like the cadence and the promos needs to change. But the match is the match, isn't it? Next up, it was Connor Mills defeating Cameron Kai. Kai rules. Kai absolutely rules. There's just something about the way he drags a schoolboy out here. The way everything he does just seems violent. He seems like he's on the... I can't believe. Isn't he like... He's not got a cage match. I'm sure he's like 17 or something. He's absolutely jacked. He's technically fantastic. He's getting the... I really think that of all this young crop of Rev Pro stars, and there's a lot of them, there's an embarrassment of riches in about 5 years' time, between JJ Gale, Callum Newman, Cameron Kai, Leon Slater, all these young wrestlers coming up. I really think Cameron Kai has the highest ceiling. I really do. And I know Leon Slater's the one, but that's because he's a little bit further along than Cameron Kai. I think Leon Slater's going to be great, but I think Cameron Kai is going to be the one out of this little group. Mills' aggressiveness in this as well. You know what I was saying before about how they should just have him wrestle the way he wrestles, the way he positions Kai. You know, wrestlers do that thing, don't they, where they just touch their head and it magically go where they need to be. But not with Mills. He drags you and wrenches you around the ring. And yeah, just fantastic stuff. Great fight backs from Kai. I think he's an absolute natural. I really do. I thought this was a really decent match. Next up, we had a singles match. And we're back to the women's division. And it was Danny Luna defeating Hyan. Yeah, again, not the greatest match in the world by any stretch. I don't understand why they're going back and forth with the wins in this. It's just a little bit strange to me, the way they're doing it. It's just not how I would do it at all, to say the least. Next up, we had what I think was probably... Oh, no, sorry, I missed a match. This was before. Before that, this was probably my favourite match of the three shows. Robbie X defeating Wild Boar. Again, another NXT UK expat. And I'm thinking about weight again. They're going on and on about weight in this, and you just think, shut up. They had Mills and X rowing at the start of this again. Like I say, they're just telling it in these really weird ways. Do promos. Tell things within the confines of pro wrestling matches. But then once the match started, it was great. You know, punches to open this. The punches were so mean. I don't know if it's Wild Boar's face, the way he can contort his face into this violent expression, just looks absolutely fantastic. There was flips from the that Power Rangers move where he runs up the wall, Robbie X, and Wild Boar does this huge bum drop that was just fantastic. And you know, just to use a cliche, he's got a snap to him, the way he punches and the way he hits, and it's just weird, you know. And again, there's so many little stories that you've got here. I mean, look at this story you could tell here. Connor Mills is facing a rookie. Robbie X is the fighting champ going against the terrifying Wild Boar. There's so many little nuances to this story that tell themselves, but they're determined to tell it with run-ins and all sorts. And look, with this, we knew Wild Boar was never going to win. You know Robbie X is going to win, but because they're great wrestlers, they had you believe. They made you believe. Yeah, then it was the Danny Luna against Hyan match. It was, you know, rubbish. There was a distraction in this. There was a belt shot. It's crap. Then it was Callum Newman against JJ Gale, and this was really good. And I like the story that they're telling with these two, is that they're both really trying to find their feet now. You know, they were contenders, they've moved up, they tried being a tag team, it didn't really work, and now they're wrestling each other to see where they can get. And I like the way that sort of interaction feels. This had a much slower pace than I was expecting. I was expecting them to go out and just absolutely kill it and go balls to the wall. And they didn't really. It was quite slow and deliberate. And it almost felt that they were preparing themselves for something perhaps a little bit more main event style. I mean, I know this is semi-main, so, you know, it's not crazy to think that, is it? But it just kind of made me think a little bit. I think they need something now. You know, they had the match against each other, but I don't know. Like, I think we're ready for the next part of the story, but the story so far has been really, really interesting. And it was Irie against Oku. I'm an Irie fan now. You know, I genuinely am. I think after 16 carat, it really won me over. I was never an Irie hater. I was just kind of a hater. I'm sorry. It's easy to forget that I am a straight G from the streets, but I was never a hater. No cap at all with that. I was never an Irie hater. But I never got him as much as other people did, particularly WXW fans. But I think I am now. They wrestled this really well. You know, Irie got the power moves. Oku thought he had him at the start as well, which was good. You know, Oku's really good at just showing that little arrogant side of himself that I think is really interesting. And he was able to just give that slight impression that he was dominant at the start and that he was finding it a little bit easy. But then obviously Irie went into power mode and Oku had to go through that journey of realising it wasn't as easy as he thought it was going to be. He was going to fight back, and loads of great things in this. Like there was a twist avalanche Samoan drop where Irie gets him on his shoulders on the second rope and moves along the rope and spins round, and just unbelievable stuff. And again, this is just placement stuff, isn't it? We're all on the road to these big title matches, and I think they're telling the Oku story really well. And if they come into a town near you and you get an Oku main event as they're building towards this, it's good, you know, really good wrestling. Irie lost. He seems like he's going back to Japan for a bit. So who knows what's going to happen in future? But yeah, this was a solid match. Next, let's go back. Where's Stevenage in comparison to Southampton? I'm guessing it's been off. Anyway, let's go to Stevenage. So this show was just about an hour ago, and the live stream worked pretty well, actually, for the most part. I actually caught at the end and went back to the start, and it joined a match in progress. It was a Leighton Buzzard match. So I think I have missed a little bit, which I will go back and check out and let you know if it's worth watching. But this was Cruel Intentions. It's a named show. Not just like live in Southampton or whatever. They've actually given it a name. But Leighton Buzzard defeated Cameron Kai. And then we joined it properly with Luke Jacobs defeating Levi Muir. This is where what I was saying before comes into play about Luke Jacobs. This is where I'm getting a little bit worried. Because if you want to start using these advancements, because I think Luke Jacobs was great as he was. But if you want to start using some of these advancements that he's made in terms of his charisma, in terms of the way he delivers himself and that sort of thing, great. But the way they did it in this was by things like delay tactics, going up to the crowd and giving, you know, making faces at the kids in the crowd. No, that's not Luke Jacobs. That's not what's going to get him over. Sorry, I had to pause there. My neighbour had the audacity to walk past, so you might have heard me dog. But yeah, that's not what's going to get Luke Jacobs over, is it? Ironically, that is what's going to get Levi Muir over. He was great with the kids here, the way he was able to, point and get the boos and get, and that sort of, not the boos, get the cheers, and, he moted a very caricatured, not quite caricatured him. He's not Hulk Hogan. He's not ridiculous. There's a grounding of reality to him, but in that very larger than life world that he was really good at. The idea they kept talking about, Jacobs playing mind games and they backfired and stuff, and that's not what Jacobs' strengths are. It's like we were saying with Zack Knight about him doing chain wrestling. That's not where his strengths lie. So don't do it. It's not a part of Luke Jacobs' game that you ever came on and thought, oh, I really wish he was a better heel. It's the same when you watch a Zack Knight match. It's not like you watch him and think, oh, do you know the one thing that was missing here? Chain wrestling. So I sounded a bit scouse then. I mean, my wife's a scouser, so I get scouse dropping every now and then. Live crowd liked it, They liked Levi Muir, and it was completely to his strength, so that is what it was. Next up, we have Maya Matthews versus Hyan. Really weird thing here that they had, and I'm kicking myself because I can't remember her name, but the person they have on commentary a lot nowadays, the lady on commentary, not Gio. It was the other one. I can't remember her name. Is it Katie something? I can't remember. But they had her, I think, do kind of the thing that Stephanie Chase used to do. Like just give little interviews and things before matches and just catch you up on the show, like the story that's been happening. And I think that's a really great idea. Yet they've done it exactly once. I don't know why. And it's great if it's something they're going to do more often and give the the live audience at home something a little bit to sort of sink the teeth into and get people caught up, so people don't have to watch everything. They can just drop in and out. But why do it once and never again? Just really bizarre. A really bizarre thing. And this is one of those matches where you kind of know what you're getting. I think the thing with Maya Matthews is she really needs to be battered. She really needs to be really beaten down convincingly, and Hyan wasn't really able to do that. I thought the work was good. I think, at one point during this, actually, and this is worth pointing out to talk about the production issues, I thought this match was dying, but it turns out they just not turned the microphones on, because they literally turned the microphone on halfway through this, and suddenly the crowd was alive and moving and making noise. Either that or there was a SmackDown style injection of noise. I don't know, but it just suddenly seemed to come out of nowhere. Bizarre, really, really bizarre. But yeah, the match was fine. Again, I'm just not really into the story here. Talking about stories, we're back with Connor Mills, and obviously Connor Mills is going for the undisputed British Cruiserweight title. He's building towards that match. He wants to make sure he's in a good position, make sure he doesn't lose that title shot, I'm assuming. So, what's the best matchup for Connor Mills? Obviously, Lance Archer, the biggest heavyweight realistically we're going to get. You don't get much bigger than Lance Archer, do you? Unless they're going to do an Oku. If they're telling me that Oku's a heavyweight, they might, tell me Lance Archer's a cruiserweight. And it's not my fault, by the way, that this obsession with weight. It comes from them, doesn't it? They're the ones who've decided that it matters or it doesn't matter. And 1 minute they're talking about it, the next minute they're not. Why not just do it like a TV title style thing with the cruiserweight belt and the heavyweight belt? You can have the Rev Pro Undisputed British Champion and like the Intercontinental title. They should have kept the Southside title if they were going to do this. Just have it as the Southside title as your secondary title and the Rev Pro title as your main title. And we don't have to have this weirdness and these weird explanations all the time. Anyway, the match was good. It wasn't what I expected. This is what I mean about Connor Mills. If you're going to give him a story, he could do it so well. So he wasn't playing the chicken shit heel. He wasn't running away from the big man. He out-wrestled him. He knew that if it's going to come down to a fight, he's not going to win. So he didn't do that. He was cleverer than Lance Archer. He did the whole chopping down the tree thing that I thought was really exciting. There was a great bit in this where he kind of mocked Robbie X. He went to do, sort of pretend he was going to do the flip, and it cost him. That gave Lance Archer an opening to sort of regain control. Again, just little things that he can do that not many other people can. Mills, he's got that great story, sort of mind for a story, I should say, and I think it's kind of missing it a little bit here. Honestly, this was weird because there were so many bits about it like Archer really sold for Mills and it really made him look good. But then there was a ref bump and a low blow and the steel chair came out and it was just the corny wrestling handbook. And he doesn't do this all the time, Andy. And you listen to... I'm very, very fair about Rev Pro. I'm probably more critical than a lot of people are. But I know that I'm fair because whenever they just wrestle or fight or do something cool in the ring, I'll praise them to high heaven. But when they do something like this, I don't know, it seems to be a couple of times a year. We just have to go through these doldrums of really weird, rubbish booking. Overbooking. I've said in reviews, the best way I can think of describing it is that Andy just sometimes books the shit out of stuff. And it's just not necessary. Robbie X comes out and makes the save, obviously, because we've got to tell the rubbish story here, haven't we? And then Lance Archer pins Connor Mills. And who's more excited for Connor Mills making this challenge now? I don't want to see Connor Mills get his comeuppance necessarily. That's cliche, it's done, it's not very interesting. What I want to see is Robbie X either overcome... See if Robbie X can overcome this terrifying baddie Connor Mills. He should be the cruiserweight Ivan Drogo. The if he dies, he dies attitude. Instead, it's just bizarre. I don't get it. Next up, it was Gideon Gray against Robbie X. Gideon Gray had loads of bags of powder in him that the referee kept finding, and he volunteered to give one over, and it was all very kind of what you'd expect, you know what I mean? There was some cool moves from Robbie X, but it was the comedy match on the show, and there are very, very few people that can make comedy wrestling captivating, and I think Gideon Gray's one of them, so it was fine. Next up, Jordan Breaks against JJ Gale. I really like Jordan Breaks. He's someone who's finding his feet a little bit, but I've talked a lot about how I think he's got that little bit of spark in purpose, and the fact he's bringing it to Rev Pro is really great. He's obviously building towards this match with Zack Sabre Jr., which is an absolutely fantastic pairing. Really, really great stuff. And this match was good. It was smart wrestling. You know, it wasn't exactly the best thing in the world, but it was good. I enjoyed it. Main event time, and we had another Oku match on the march towards York Hall. It was against Trent Seven. Now, I've talked a lot about wrestlers who went to NXT UK, and you know, maybe we've got to live and let live now, haven't we? And we could be confident. It doesn't matter who was right in the end. You know, we were, but it doesn't matter. We could just sort of move on and forget about things. But there's something about Trent Seven that I don't know if I can do that with. I think that's maybe because he was at the figurehead of it all, that he was kind of way up there with it. And actually, I know what it is. I think it was, and I'm searching for the exact tweet now because I don't think we should ever forget this tweet. And people who... people know what I'm saying. People who know what I'm talking about know exactly which tweet I'm talking about. The hang your head in shame tweet to Justin Sizem. Basically, if you weren't around, this was when NXT UK was all kicking off. Justin Sizem was he was a wrestler. He kind of disappeared, didn't he? I don't know where he is. I'm still trying to find the tweet. So I mean, I could probably read it out verbatim, but there was essentially he was kind of an upper mid card wrestler. He wasn't doing anything particularly brilliant, but he wrote a letter, an open letter to everyone, and posted it. Oh, I've got it here. I've got the letter. It's brilliant. So I'm doing Twitter drama, but we love this. He wrote an open letter to British wrestling, and he's saying these words are my own. And last week, it came to light that through, independent UK promotions, their future's been left uncertain because there was all these things, weren't there, that people could still work for NXT, but then still work for their home promotions, and that turned out, but shock horror, that wasn't the case. And basically, Justin Sizem stuck his flag in the ground for independence and said, "Look, I'm not prepared to do that. I don't think that's right." He says, I personally fear for a future not too far away where WWE has succeeded in its mission and as a consequence destroyed much of our thriving domestic scene. He said that. He said what we're all thinking. It's true, wasn't it? And he says, I hereby pledge to follow in the footsteps of the great British wrestlers that have come before me and carry on building the British scene. And I think people kind of laughed at him a little bit, because he was Justin Sizem. He wasn't... let's have a look at what he's doing now. He wasn't exactly someone who was troubling. Yeah, he's not tweeted for 2 years, so he might just be off Twitter. I don't know. But he was a nice sentiment that most people, I think, on the scene agreed with. And Trent Seven's response was to tell him to hang his head in shame. He said, "Hang your head in shame." He said. Let me find it, so I've got the tweet here. Hang your head in shame, Justin. We've all worked incredibly hard over the past few years to create a thriving scene for all levels of talent to perform on. Delete your tweet and stop attention seeking. What an idiot. I don't believe that Trent Seven was so stupid enough to believe that. Ridiculous thing. And I can't get that out of my head when I see Trent Seven now. And I know it's pathetic. I know I should probably move on and just forget about it. Because he's an alright wrestler. He's perfectly fine. But, you can't join NXT UK. You can join NXT UK and get away with it. But you can't be NXT UK's cheerleader and then come back to the scene that you thought that you... Yeah, you know what I mean. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah, the match was okay. It was fine. There was some great body slams in it from Trent Seven, so he was obviously practicing those in the warehouse. Fine wrestling. Trent Seven stuck his head in a freezer at one point, and we all laughed. It was hilarious. And then Leighton Buzzard came out and interfered and ruined it all. So we've had another run-in from Rev Pro. Trent Seven wins. All right. I've had me dig at Trent Seven. Now I'll move on. He's a perfectly fine wrestler. I'm sure we'll be able to look at it with an open mind next time. But why is Leighton Buzzard running in and doing distractions? What is up with Rev Pro at the minute? What is up with him? Am I in any doubt that York Hall will be an absolute banging show? Of course I'm not. Am I in any doubt that show at the Copper Box might be the best British independent show of all time? Every chance that's going to happen. I'm confident that might happen. In fact, I'm confident it will happen. But what Rev Pro had done is they built up this cultural capital that a wrestling fan could watch these shows and watch every single show. They justified signing up and trying to watch live when they allowed us and watching them within a couple of days of them coming up and keeping up with the stories. And they'd started to grow into this really interesting promotion again with violence and proper wrestling. Yet now we've just gone back to what it was like a few years ago when they went through that 6 months of run-ins and nonsense. I wrote an article ages ago for Voices of Wrestling. It was one of the first things I ever wrote. And it was kind of the thing that, not put me on the map, obviously, I'm not that arrogant. But it was the first thing that I did that kind of went a few places. Like I remember, it sounds really silly now, but I remember Grapple reading out an extract to it. That might have even been, it would have been when it was the Spotlight, I think, back it went on the Indie Corner. And I was just really chuffed that this article I'd written people had agreed with, and it was during all that time when there was a feud between Pac, Ospreay, and Zack Sabre Jr., and there was just loads of rubbish of run-ins and cheating and that sort of thing, and people purposely leaving matches. And it just doesn't sit right with what Rev Pro are. It doesn't sit right with what Rev Pro are doing. And the question that I asked in that article is Rev Pro okay? Like, what's going on? Have they lost their mind? And they were starting to build a reputation of a company that promised things and didn't deliver them. And I don't think we're anywhere near that stage yet. But I think we need to nip this running, this this sports entertainment culture needs to be nipped in the bud. Because we've done this before with Rev Pro, and I know Andy loves 90s WWF and WCW. I know he likes that sort of thing. But you just think you've built a company on being different and being proper wrestling. And I know he loves that as well. And I know he can book that, and he's just not. And I'm just really confused by what's going on at the minute. And these last few shows that I've seen I'm quite taken aback with what I'm watching, and I'm not excited for Rev Pro at the minute, which is a shame. It feels like a long time since I've come on here and been properly negative about Rev Pro. Always have niggles. I always do. But the thing with the niggles is, and this is something that I've always said about Rev Pro, is they're worth chewing on. You never feel like you're wasting your time with Rev Pro. Whereas with this show, to be honest with you, I felt like I kind of wasted my time. So by the time you listen to this, you'll have seen the Sheffield show, which does look a little bit more interesting, actually. You've got a Will Ospreay match on that against Callum Newman. You've got Lance Archer against Rampage Brown. I bet that's amazing. Trent Seven against Irie, which could be okay. We're going to leave Trent Seven alone for a bit now. We're going to give him his best shot. We're going to let him have it. We've had our dig. We brought up the tweet. He deserved that. But we're going to let him have a good bite at the cherry. Yeah, we'll see what that show was like. I mean, I'm absolutely sure that, like I say, the Epic Encounter show and the 11th anniversary show is going to be fantastic. But for now, we're not getting much of that. Anyway, let's wrap things up. Do you know, I think next week we need to have a segment of toxic positivity. I need to be like those weird critics that go out the way to say how much they like things. Let's try and find the best. And this is going to be our mission over the next 2 weeks, to try and find the best Arrows of Hungry match. So send it to me. You know, send it over. We'll find out what it's like. In fact, I'm going to put it in the Discord in a minute, and I want you to tell me what you think the best Arrows of Hungry match of all time is. And we'll find it and we'll watch it, and we'll have 10 minutes of forced positivity, because I feel a little bit grumpy, to be honest with you. And I've had a really good day. I've had steak frite for me tea. I've had I had a feast for me pudding. The best ice cream, in my opinion. I don't know, feast or Calippo. I mean home ice cream, because obviously the best ice cream is a 99, isn't it? You can't get away from that. It's just a cone with a flake in it. Maybe not the traditional cone, but if you can get it, the waffle cone, I think takes things to another level, but that's not essential. But the whippy ice cream with a flake in is the best. But if you're at home, do you know what? I tell you what, actually, there's a little bit of a contender. If you go to Iceland, I don't know if this is true this year, but last year they had sweet shop ice creams. So there was blackjack, fruit salad, foam bananas. I'm probably forgetting one. There was loads of really good ones. Let's go on the Iceland website now and see if we can see it. Do they do home delivery and stuff? Because obviously it's too hot for cheese. I love cheese and crackers, but it's too warm for it at the minute. Oh, but yeah, look, they've got cola bottles now, Wham rockets, Hubba Bubba ice lollies, strawberry milkshakes, you know, the sort of little foamy things you get. They've got those. Roundtree watermelons, that's a throwback. They've got those. This has really cheered me up, this, thinking about ice creams. Because it's been bloody boiling, hasn't it? Anyway, I'm waffling now. I'm not going to go full Alan Partridge on this show. This is a serious podcast where we do serious criticism. Have a lovely fortnight. Don't forget, as I say, get in the Discord. There's a Eurograps Express room. Tell me what your favourite Arrows of Hungry match of all time is, and we'll talk about some of them next week. All right. See you in a bit. Have a good one.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are the co-hosts of Jumping Bomb Audio, the podcast all about Joshi Pro Wrestling here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Every other Monday, we are with you talking about the biggest news in Joshi, along with show reviews, previews, and much, much more.
So if you're new to Joshi or you've been a longtime fan, this is the show for you. We've got something for everyone here. So check us out, Jumping Bomb Audio.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.